All right, well, welcome to our board retreat session. If you'd like to stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Great. Well, it's wonderful that you all came out today. But the camera can't see that no one's in the back, right?
It's the biggest crowd we've ever had. Nobody's ever had bigger crowds than this.
That's right.
Although for a retreat, it is somewhat appropriate for the board to have time to discuss things. So
Absolutely.
I think we're
And just for the record, and we'll repeat it if necessary, if there were anyone here, the purpose of this first meeting, the next 90 minutes, is really for the board to discuss things, so there won't really be an opportunity for public comment until the next session, where there will be ample opportunity for public comment. So, is there an approval of the agenda?
I'll move to approve.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That's unanimous. I talked with Tiffany a little bit yesterday, and there were three kind of projects that we thought we could undertake today. One is like a visioning process for 30 minutes, and then another is kind of staking out what things should be standardized across the district and what things should be individualized to schools. And then the third, really goals. What are our goals? I'll turn the time over to Tiffany to get into more detail here. But my opinion of the first 30 minutes, Tiffany's put together kind of a visioning document. And that's something that we can either review and tweak, or decide that we don't like it at all and start fresh.
She's like, oh no.
You can certainly decide that, yes.
So,
and
having said that, it's all yours.
thanks. It may or may not be as equal 30-minute chunks. And Jane and I were talking a little bit. We had planned for a Saturday kind of half day, and so this is a truncated version. We will definitely not get to everything that we would have got to in a half day, and that's okay. And also because we have this shortened timeline, and because school starts on school starts on Wednesday, but we have an all-staff day on Monday. And I want to be able to share some of this work with staff. I did some pre-work, but actually, to Thane's point, anything that you don't like can be modified. And so as we've been talking about this and sharing these ideas with teachers, we say, and when the board approves this and the board kind of blesses this as the vision, that's when we'll be moving forward. So everything is with the caveat that, pending your discussion, feedback and thoughts today. So I will start. We actually have some new tech in the boardroom. We can Chromecast from up here, so I don't have to stand at the back of the room to do the PowerPoint, which is quite exciting. Yes, which is, being small is great, because I asked for it on 8 o'clock on a Wednesday, and I got it by 9 o'clock on Wednesday. So that was
Having
great.
good people.
Yes, good people, and being small enough that your tech director is right there. So this is a slogan that I've been trying out. I had actually kind of a number of slogans, and I was pitching them, and you'll see a little bit later the philosophy for that. This by and far was the tagline that people liked the most. They didn't actually like any of them, so I didn't bring them to you for consideration. So these, I've been opening our Engage to Impact meetings with this slogan, if you will, and I wanted to share it with you, and I'll stop here and see if there's any feedback, thoughts, like it, don't like it.
I love it. The heart and future of the community. It's just reminding people we're here, we are part of a big part, the presence of it, and that we're the future too. I mean, I've seen a bumper sticker. You think, education is expensive. Try having a community that's not educated. That's really expensive.
Yeah, I agree. But I mean, it's my mantra about public education. You know, I talk about it all the time, and frankly, you could substitute the with the word any. It's the reality. Public schools are the heart and future of any community.
I thought you meant the first
I
one.
know.
I was
Working on it.
Any heart
I
and
don't think that
future.
makes sense.
Any heart and future of any.
But not the Ojai Unified School.
Word salad. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, I'm all I love it.
Did you say nobody liked the other one?
Yeah.
But people did like this
Yes,
one? Okay.
yes,
I
everybody
didn't
was
quite
like, oh, that's
understand.
the one. There were no other options that people.
It reminds me of a little moment from Jim and Rob's has all those old-fashioned signs, and it just shows you how different politics are. Because there's a thing in there for a district attorney, and it says, "Doing an okay job." That was his sign. It was like, "I'm okay. Reelect me." You know, now it's like the best ever. You know?
Right. And what I was trying to capture here is both, you'll see when we get to our mission work, in pitching these ideas to staff, pretty much at every single school and in the Engage to Impact and every community group I work with, one of the things that comes up over and over again is that this is a special community that feels connected. And so, and I hear over and over again, the school district is the heartbeat of that community. And so that came from, somebody said that, and I thought, oh, that makes sense. So I didn't this is just pieced together from things that people have said over time in those feedback meetings.
I can't think of anything better. Is that a rinky endorsement?
Yes, it's okay, that's what you're telling me.
Doing an okay job.
I think it speaks to what we said in the past, right? And it is a linking, sort of a linking phrase. I mean, I don't know that it can be improved, frankly, other than maybe community might be valley or something. But community really is more what we're talking about, right? Not just a geography, but a collection of people. So I like it, and the kids are the future. I mean, there's no denying it. So.
I think the part that I like is the emphasis on the whole child rather than just the brain by putting the heart in there,
Yeah.
which I think we do and should focus on.
Good news, you'll see more of that later on. So if we move forward with this, it sounds like there's agreement to do so, then this will become part of our branding. So on our district Facebook page, our district web page, you'll see a lot of work on rebranding. You don't have everything here in front of you today because it's an iterative process and step by step, but this is one piece of that branding process. You'll also see that we have a professional photograph there of kids.
And I was going to comment on that. I think it's very compelling because you can feel the forward motion.
You'll see that we took the chalk off of our website and we put pictures of kids. And we put pictures of kids on every website. And hopefully you've noticed in our social media that we've been using pictures of kids. And professional pictures are great if we have them. But you'll see that we're doing some investment in that work of really showing what our kids are doing and communicating that out both in words and visually to the community. So I'd like to thank Stephen Adams for this particular picture.
Where is this? I keep trying to figure
This
it out.
is
It
on.
must have been a field trip.
Yes, it's.
It's at Forest Home when they
Thank
did the Gold Rush
Oh,
days.
right. That it looks
Yeah.
familiar, and yet I couldn't.
Yeah, it
quite
was going
get
to take me a long
there.
time to pull that up.
That makes sense.
So I am going to go over the group norms, and I was debating whether or not to do this because it's not to be offensive in any way and to say that you need them. However, we are modeling group norms in every meeting that we have. So in the Engage to Impact meeting, we do group norms. In our PLC meetings, we do group norms. We've asked our sites to have staff norms in which they have expectations for the staff. And so I just wanted to model that the board is also not, we have norms as well. And so these are just the ones I've been using in the Engage to Impact meetings. If at some point we feel like we want to address a group of norms, I know you've had them in the past, and if we want to readdress these as a future item, we certainly can, but I just put these in here as what we've been using in the community. So staying positive, focusing on ideas and solutions. Hogs or logs is, you can tell I have an elementary degree, but hogs or logs is basically if someone is talking the entire time or if someone is not talking at all. And here on the board, you do a really good job of going around and everyone says something. But in our community meetings, we want to make sure that there's not one person who's talking the entire time and someone who doesn't say anything because they don't feel like they can do that. And so making sure that everybody has feedback. Recognizing and respecting feelings, backgrounds, cultural differences, and then staying focused on the topic of tonight's work. And you'll see tonight, I have one little slice of the world, and you're going to want to do lots more work, and we're going to say this is the slice of the world that we're working on now with preparation and future steps for how we get to the bigger picture. So I have an hour and a half's worth of content, not 4 hours worth of content for you. So I wanted to share with you the philosophical foundations for the creation of all of these things. And I translated this from PowerPoint into Google Slides so I could Chromecast it, so I apologize for the weirdness. But it looks good on your slides. If you want to just direct your attention to your paper where it looks right. So the first, and most of these you should recognize from my interview process, because I think I talked about all of these at some point in the interview process, so they shouldn't be a surprise to you. But these are, for me, some of the components, not all of them, but that help guide this work. So the first is this idea of place-based education. And this is the official definition, and what I would say is the way that I think about it is ensuring that the values of the community are reflected in the public school. So instead of having a public school that's just the school down the street, and it's always been the school down the street, and it's just a public school, really saying our public school is the heart and future of our community, and therefore it should be reflective of what our community values and believes. One of the things that I think is really amazing about Ojai is you have more of a collective belief system and kind of value system, we do, since I'm a resident here, but we have more of a collective value system than other places. It's more cohesive, and I think that's really great. And so I think our schools should be considering those in the work that we do, right? So that people say, oh, I love that school because they're doing these things that we believe in, that we practice at home, that we, talk about in the community, that we value, that our community organizations value and contribute to. And it also helps our community organizations to plug in because they're like, oh, we do that, we can help with that, right? Thoughts about that?
No. No, my only thought is I don't know how long this is going to take, and I'm just concerned about having a
Yes.
board retreat
Yes.
rather than a
Yes.
superintendent's retreat.
So,
I mean,
would you
being
like me to pause
positive.
in between?
No,
and
just let's
after?
cover it
Okay,
quickly.
got it. Okay,
Yeah.
great.
If we have
Yeah.
questions, let's dive
Perfect.
deep into
Okay,
it.
so agile thinking, there's a whole bunch of pieces of agile thinking. These are the two that you will see we do frequently. We experiment and learn rapidly. So there's a lot of times where I'll say, let's try this and see what happens. And so we can get feedback right away. We
Oh, I love
can, instead of planning, never doing anything, rolling something out, having that thing we rolled out not be, any good. So you will see, even in tonight's regular board agenda, some things where we're experimenting and learning rapidly, and then delivering value continuously. And I really say this, every day in every way we get better and better. So you should see, even in our schools, if you were to visit today, dozens and dozens of little things that are improved. So every day we make some little improvement at every school. And then creative people power.
And to be positive, I think you've done a great job doing that so far. In
Thank you.
delivering on small, achievable things to get started.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I'll just throw in there, I think on the agile thinking, just because it brings to mind, and something that I think is really important is I would love to see more, especially at the sites, agile problem solving.
Yes.
There's so much
Yes.
weddedness to things that are, there's, unfortunately, some people like to say no.
Mhm.
And instead, it would be great if people were empowered to say yes and allowed to do so, within some reasonable range of discretion. Because it's just amazing how often you get bogged down in things that are just nonsensical.
Right.
And the default could be yes rather than no.
Yeah.
Yes, and you will see that
Trying
is
to
a
say,
culture
yeah,
shift we're working
trying
on.
to say yes is a very different thing than often happens in the school environment, where the reflexive response is no.
Yes. And I will tell you, I've had some specific conversations with staff members about that. So I hear that you say your initial bargaining position is no, and then maybe eventually you get to yes. Can we think about it differently and say yes, but let's do blah, 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 blah. So I've been working with staff who maybe have that initial inclination. And I think it's not out of not wanting to try and do things. It's actually out of a fear-based, like I'm operating out of fear of failure. And so if we can think differently about, this is an experiment, and if it doesn't work, we'll either say, we're not gonna do that anymore, or we'll tweak it and get better, but we have to try something.
And I think that needs to be a cultural norm from the top down, that we become a district that is not afraid to experiment, where the kids aren't afraid of, I feel like we're teaching fear of failure oftentimes in the way we teach, and in the testing, and in some of the competitiveness of grades that is kind of ingrained in the culture. And so I'm looking forward to risk-taking becoming a cultural norm.
Good, I'm glad. You have the right person.
To a certain extent, I mean, I totally agree with that. The nimbleness and all that I come out of, high tech from way back, and turn on a dime, the product doesn't work. Okay, we try something else, right? Biotech was a series of failures with a couple of really profitable successes, right? It only takes one. But to be nimble, right? To be that quick, your organization has to be really solid, right? Infrastructure-wise, policy-wise, procedural-wise. I'm not deeply into the bureaucratic processes of the district, but my initial impressions over the last, not initial, over the last few years, is that they're kind of legacy.
Right.
And that to support people turning on a dime or putting in a new program and tracking the results, which is really important, we need to get all of that stuff done. So
Yes.
that's one of the things on my list in terms of things that we really should be looking at. I know it's really unglamorous and practically invisible, but it makes everybody's lives better, and it makes us run better. So these little examples are exactly it, right? I mean, there's so many places for quick gains without having to turn stuff over. The parent
Square.
square. I was going to say Parent Trap. I knew it wasn't that.
We may call it that internally now.
So that's another example of
Yeah.
that. But I want us to keep an eye on that, right? Because that's the vehicle that gets us to be nimble. So anyway.
And then the last one is creative people power, and this is basically using your community, and there's a book Liz Wiseman wrote called Multipliers. It's the same kind of idea that our community and our creativity together help us solve these problems. So it's not me sitting in this chair, it's us doing this work together, and the Engage to Impact series was really founded on that kind of idea, that we go out to the community and ask them to help think about what we can do better and to be creative problem solvers.
Kathy, do you have an extra pen I could borrow?
I have one.
Oh, never mind, thank you.
So our next, and I won't. So I shared this with the community, and I would share these are the same kind of agile principles again, working across issues, starting with and building on our assets instead of our deficiencies, because this district truly has a lot of assets. We're doing a lot of good work. None of this is like, let's build this from scratch. It's let's see what's working well and build on that and expand on that using our people. And then this fourth one is that nimble, turn on a dime, being adaptive and responsive. So one thing that I hear kind of frequently is, well, this changes with superintendents, or, oh, we're gonna have this plan and then it's just gonna change. And I would say, yes, yes, education should change. It should change every year. It should be adaptive to kids and new things that are happening. And so that's part of the work that we need to do. So this idea that we're gonna build something and then it's gonna change someday, instead of being afraid of that, we should embrace that and say, this is what we're doing for now, and eventually we will adapt it to whatever we need to adapt.
It's not a flaw, it's a design element.
Right, right. But I think that's a really important piece, because sometimes people think, like, I have to build this for 100 years.
Right. And also that focus on the people, people are powerful change agents. It also, that focuses on our talks about giving teachers that sense of they do have control. They do have choices that they can make based on the children that are seated in their classroom versus, oh, well, this is the book I have to use,
Right.
and this is the chapter that I have to cover. That there's much more excitement for the teachers and for the students as they, change that focus to learning versus fact repetition or something along those lines.
Well, that's a complicated one, isn't it? Because we have a curriculum. So maybe on a ad hoc basis, you could pull out of the curriculum and go to some particular thing that just happened in the classroom. But it's overall, the teachers are expected, presumably, to follow the curriculum, right? To cover that material that has to be covered in that grade. At least
So let's
that's
see
what
if we can
that's what the
pause
state
that.
says, right?
Let's see if we can pause that, because when we get to this next piece, there's a great place to have that conversation. But absolutely, it's a polarity, right? And we have to address it, so we'll get there. So just to share with you, because we've been saying that we're going to share the engage to impact results, feedback. So we had 3 of them. One was on community values, those kind of themes that come up consistently in the community, which you will see in our vision document. And the second was on academics. We showed most likely to succeed, that movie, and had a real discussion about what does learning mean and look like. And then the last one was on inclusive culture. And really what we were getting at there was the social emotional core for students. And what you'll see when we get to the vision visual is that those 3 pieces are modeled in the vision visual. And so they weren't accidental, they were designed to inform the work of the vision for you to consider tonight. So just a few notes on attendance. We had 200 people, almost exactly, but give or take 200 people come to the 3 different events. 30% attended all 3 and 50% attended 2 of them. So we had good repeat customers. So this is for anyone who attend any of them. We can talk about anything that you'd like, but I kind of broke this into thoughts, impressions from any of the events, any themes from any of the event notes that you received last night that are also available, and any ideas for the future that you may have.
One of the things that I noted that came up in the, I think it was in the first engaged impact, was the desire for feedback loops. That it seemed people use that terminology over and over again, and I think, for example, this is the first time the community's been asked, at least in quite a while, to give feedback on some of this stuff. But I've heard it with the students at the second Engage to Impact, that being able to give teachers feedback was important. Having teacher collaboration was important, but also having some way for students to comment on how this is working and what they're seeing. So
Do you
feedback
think that's
loops.
at all levels or mostly at the high school?
I asked that in an education Facebook group with people in Ojai, and one of the teachers in Ojai said she's done it with kids as young as 4th grade, and it's been very valuable. So, I'm not an expert in that area. I don't know. I would ask teachers. Yeah.
And I think there are 2 things, the feedback loop, but I want to pull out that piece of student voice. And one thing that hopefully you're seeing as a model is this idea of student voice. So we had 2 student panels in our Engage to Impact. One was with high school kids and one was with elementary and middle school kids. I am hoping at some point we can re-envision the board meeting and have some students at our board meetings. Either we're honoring them or they're presenting or some version of kids being here for some portion of the board meeting in addition to the student
Kevin
rep.
has asked for that before.
But I think we can do that in a way that's both time sensitive and also meaningful for the kids, and we could maybe recognize things that they do at their sites on a rotating school basis. And
Could I just,
Mhm.
well, when is the election for the new?
It'll be the first week of school, well, the second week of school.
And then you'll see our proposed vision is student-centered, it's in student language. So that student voice is something that I think is critical to the work. We can't really talk about education unless we talk to students about their experiences in education, because it's been a long time since I was in school, probably same for you. So, you know, instead of drawing on our experiences and our experiences as an outsider, truly the only person who can speak to what it's like to be in school is somebody who's, you know, to be a student is somebody who is a student. So trying to provide that those opportunities for us to give us feedback, and I love that we have the student board member. I think that's a great start. So like I'm saying, we're building and expanding on the things that we're doing well, and I think we've got that model, and we can incorporate student voice in lots of other ways.
Oh, there's a lot of ways. I mean, you know professional training, right? You don't ever do a training without asking people how they felt
Right.
about it, right?
Right.
Did they feel they learned something? To me, I can't imagine why we would tie up an academic year without asking every single student, do you think you learned something? What was your highlight of the year? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, at its most basic level, right? But I want to tack on to something that Shelley said in terms of the feedback and stuff that one of the students talked about at the event that I attended, which was the integration of effort among the teachers, right?
Not teacher collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that made so much sense as they were heading into the finals at the end of their high school. And it gets to be like a funnel where it just goes faster and faster and crazier at the worst possible time. But it made also a lot of sense. If we want to maximize the benefit of what they're getting, why are we making it harder? That's really that's not what we're supposed to do, right? And I don't think it's not gonna compromise any particular instructor's curriculum to stagger or juggle the due dates and stuff like that. To me, that was like a blinding insight to think, thank God for students.
The other thing I heard from students at the this last one on Sunday, the question, I don't even remember now what the question was, but, something about when do you learn best?
How can we make your school or classroom, it was probably how can we make your classroom more welcoming or inclusive?
Well, but they all specifically spoke to what should we do more of? And I think to every single student, they said, project-based learning, we want hands-on stuff,
Yeah.
we want to be doing something.
Yeah.
And they wanted the teachers to control the
groups.
social aspects of that so that no student was left out. And I thought that was interesting. They
Yeah.
want that, but they also don't want to fend for themselves and not be included because they're the introvert or they're and those are my words. But
It's also interesting to hear from our customers
Right.
what they really want from our teachers. They know that the teachers are there, but they're looking for something more than just fact transferal, right? They're looking for some level of guardianship, some level of responsibility, and it's like even they recognize that. So.
And these were elementary school kids. I
Yeah.
thought it was pretty impressively aware of
We got smart
what
kids.
works.
Well, and it's hard to say, I'll never use this in my life if they're using it to
Right then.
accomplish a project.
That's true.
yeah. Any other thoughts, impressions, things that popped out to you from these notes? I know these notes are a little hard to wade through. They're typed exactly as we got them, and so sometimes they're complete sentences and make a lot of sense, and sometimes they needed a little bit more context, but they had one little index card. And honestly, I got better at the questions I asked for feedback from the first one to the third one, so the first one is much harder to read.
There were a couple of other things that jumped out at me, or I had questions about. Adjust bus times appropriately and use volunteers.
Wow,
Um,
do we know what's
I
going on?
know.
I'll look, but we all need them.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh. Yes, can I pass these
I
out to
just
anyone?
wondered if anybody had insight as to
I've got
adjust
mine.
bus times
Oh,
appropriately
this is easier, thanks.
might mean.
But this is green.
I don't know.
None of us
No.
know who, did that, but, I didn't know there were issues with bus times.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I wonder, it says pre-summer enrichment for all kids, more group and project learning, and for some reason that made me think about our summer school. And I wondered if it would make sense, instead of having summer school right after summer gets out, having it right before school starts back in session, if that could make any difference or not. Is there a reason to have it right after school gets out?
So what I
Does that
would
have to be done?
say is I have this plan to bring to you at some point in the future about having summer camps for kids.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a way to do that, that would be free of charge for us, which would be great. We could provide tons and tons of summer enrichment activities for kids, as many as we could get teachers for and kids for, and cost neutral to us. The one thing we give up on that is the ability to control the date. The date is whatever the date is that the partner organization we work with is. It's usually July 1st to July 30th, so.
But would that replace summer school? Oh, it would.
Well, we would fold our current credit recovery into that.
Oh, I
And
see.
the go-aheads into that, and then
I
we would
see.
also have camp options for kids. I
Okay.
call them career camps, but they can be whatever we want them to be. So in my last job, we had aviation camp, and we could have baking camp, and we could have robot camp, and we can have whatever camp we can find a teacher for, garden camp, whatever we can find a teacher for and pull together a meaningful experience for kids.
Okay.
So stay tuned for more plans about that potentially in the future.
I think I had seen the response for the first one, but I haven't seen the second ones, and I didn't get the email. I mean, I didn't see that I had an email. So, I would, sort of lean towards Shelley and you and Cheryl to sort of, so you were the only ones who were at all three events, to maybe say, what, if something stuck out to you about the groups. From the one I was at, I was, again, just thrilled at the level of excitement by the group. And I want that in our classrooms or for our teachers. I want our teachers to feel like, oh, it's so exciting, school's starting again, and then we've got all these great things coming, and the kids to go, yay. I mean, I know they all do the first week, my new teacher, my new classroom, but to kind of keep that going. And I think that we are already making steps, like we're talking about creating a committee for the high school in terms of electives and AP classes, and that's sort of that engagement every day.
So
And
I
the
think-
community, ever since the fire, the community has really been talking about engaging more in the schools.
And I would say, and Kathy was at all three, I think Shelley was at all three, I was at all three, and Kathy, if you have feedback to share, one of the things that I thought was really amazing was the people who came. There were people with probably not even grandkids in school anymore. There were staff members, there were classified staff members, there were parents, and there were people whose kids were not yet in school. And what I was really heartened by was the diverse group of people who came to provide input, regardless of whether it specifically impacted them or not. And our staff were not paid to be there, and they attended because they cared. And so mostly what I got out of the series was some tidbits of things, some things we've already done. Like, okay, great, we can do that tomorrow, or we can turn that on, or we can fix that. There were a number of things that are kind of those quick deliverables. But the biggest thing for me was the community desperately wants to be engaged, they want to help, and they want to be impactful. And if we as a district can provide those opportunities in an easy and meaningful way, they will show up to do that work with us. And I thought that was great. I think I said at the beginning, I didn't know if anybody was gonna come to any of these, right? So,
Well, we all told you they weren't.
You
It's in the
did.
summertime, you're
You
crazy,
did
what are you
actually tell me
thinking?
that.
I think we told you that.
You
Yeah.
had close to 200 more people than I thought would
Yeah.
come.
We have been proven
I
very
was gonna
wrong.
be there. And like you were saying at the beginning, people were grateful to be asked, and then we're grateful to be included. So for me, it helps us to think about, when we're doing this work, how can we make sure that the community is part of that feedback loop? I think, live streaming, and there's a bunch of things that we can do to build on that momentum and people's genuine desires to, we are the heart, and people feel that and want to participate. Anything else? I think we're right on our 30-minute timeline.
Yeah, but we didn't accomplish the first thing.
No, this is the first thing.
Oh, I thought the first thing was our,
No, that's the
Vision.
second thing.
that's not what we discussed, but that's fine.
It ended up changing order because it made more sense that way, but yeah, we've accomplished one of three things.
Carry on.
So
Anything?
before we move on, let me just
Yeah.
tag on one thing.
Mhm.
All of this talk about engaging the community in summer school and all these other things. I want to go back to something that Thane and other people have been talking about, and that's the more effective use of volunteers, right? A platform for that. And it seems to me that this, again, implicates that concern, right?
Yeah.
That there is no end of people who want to help us here. I mean, it's very heartening. But it's worse if we put this opportunity out there and don't take advantage of it.
Yes.
So I just want to,
Yes.
yeah, I'm all infrastructure tonight, but that platform is what's going to get us,
Yes.
get us there however we do it.
Yes.
Sure, it's like people who filled out the PTA thing at the beginning and then you found out in January that no one ever contacted them.
Right.
Right.
So there's a
Yeah.
few things that, ways that we're doing that, and I'll just share a couple. We've talked about doing something called Community Classroom on Fridays, and I think I've shared this with you in a Friday letter. So, and Robin Munson is gonna take on that project, so she's working right now with the principals to come up with a schedule. So Community Classroom is a way where if you're interested in working directly with kids, you can come and do your interest-based class. And once a month, or if you want to be at all 4 schools, you could do it every Friday, kind of depending on your schedule and what you were interested in. That's one way. And then when we get to the vision and we look at the community values, I'm proposing that we have a guiding coalition around each community value, and those are opportunities for the community members who are interested in that area, our partner organizations who are interested, to come and work with district staff to do an analysis of what we have and identify areas of growth, so kind of almost a SWOT analysis for us, and then provide us feedback about how we can work on integrating that community value in a meaningful way into the work that we're doing, and expand kind of anything that we're doing well. So the idea is that each one of those areas will now have opportunities for community members to volunteer. So we have kid level opportunities, we have the bond commission has opportunities for volunteers, in fact, a need for volunteers. So we're trying to create a system in which you can plug into, I want to work with the district on creating systems, I want to work on fiscal and facilities issues, I want to teach kids something I love, and kind of having multiple layers of volunteer opportunities, and then eventually building that into a robust system, but starting right now with our little small deliverables that we can get going. So the idea is not to say, great, you came to one meeting and now we're never gonna ask you for anything again, and
We
in
got it
fact,
all.
now we have your email and you will be emailed opportunities for future participation. So I'm glad that you brought that up, because the idea for the future is that this is a continuance, and we may choose to have meetings like this. And if we have a successful framework now, so if we have particular issues, we can have an Engage to Impact event around a particular issue, and email the people who've come and say, come talk to us about whatever it is that we might want feedback and thoughts around.
So on this slide, 2019, 2020 focus in parentheses, is that referring to the next slide?
Yes, okay, so, just move on to our vision. So, Thane told me yesterday, I've never seen a vision like this before. And it's true because we made it up. So Cheryl and I did the initial brainstorming around this, and then we shared it with the leadership team, we shared it with principals, we did a couple of revisions, and so this is there's been some thought and put into this, but it's waiting for your kind of dynamic guidance about where to go with it. So this slide about vision is just to tell you some things about it before I get to it. So it's student-centered, so you'll see that it starts with the student voice at the middle. So it's not like this one, which is what the district will do, but it's more intended to be, this is what we would like your experience to be as a student in our district. This is what we are essentially promising you as a district and promising your family that we will do. It's designed to be iterative and to be built upon, to be revised every year. So it's not necessarily, I think we'll make graphics of it, but they'll be on paper and not on whatever wood, so that we can update it, but with the same general goals, if those are what you like. And then in parentheses on the little vision piece, 2019 focus is what's in parentheses. So the other concept here is that we have a lot of things going on, and for staff, sometimes it feels like, oh my gosh, there's all these initiatives and they're not connected. Why are we doing PLCs and restorative justice and SEL and MTSS and RTI and project-based learning, and why are we doing all these things at the same time? And so this is intended to kind of show how those things are connected and where we're going holistically, looking again at the whole child. So I sent this to a designer, and then we had late breaking revisions, and so this is not designed. This is me sticking little boxes in PowerPoint over the design. So this will someday look much better than it looks at this exact moment. So that the idea is that the center, let me find mine so that I can read it. Oh. Yeah, the center is the social emotional core of the student. So when you saw those three engaged to impact, the last one was really about the social emotional core. So this is thinking about what does it feel like for our students. So it feels good to be here. So you'd see a lot of focus this year on our facilities, on making sure that our facilities are clean, making sure that our facilities are welcoming, making sure that you can tell where you're going when you walk onto a campus, that kind of thing. And the second is that people are nice to me. So when I come to school, adults are nice. They say hello, they talk to me, they engage with me. I'm, not just one of 300 kids walking around, but people actually look at me and acknowledge and engage me. So we're actually doing a customer service training with our classified staff on Monday afternoon at the all-staff day, and then we'll be working with our certificated staff on the same concepts in another way. And there's a little video that I showed around this at the last Engage to Impact, and that's also on social media if you're interested. Not to say that we don't do these things, but to make sure
Is
that
that
it's
what
a
the one
value.
with the little boy coming into the school
Yeah.
and the teacher?
Yeah. I have the tools I need to overcome difficulty. So this is where our social emotional learning curriculum is. So if I have a problem that I need solved, I have tools. So at our elementary schools, this looks like Toolbox. At our middle school, it looks like Second Step. At our high school, it's In Progress. And Thane added this one yesterday, which I appreciate. I have what I need to learn. So I have healthy food and I have access to technology. This year, that's what that means, right? In the future, it might be something different, but this year there's a focus on ensuring that students have access to technology and that students have access to healthy food for breakfast and lunch. My parents and community know how to support me. So this is a focus on communication. So this is Parent Square. This is the volunteer opportunities. This is the Guiding Coalition, and this is us communicating. If you want to support our district and our students, here are the ways and opportunities in which you can do that. So really setting that up systematically. And then when I make a mistake, I can learn from it, which is kind of the whole point of restorative justice, is if I make a mistake, I'm not penalized for the rest of my life. But when we make mistakes, which we all do, we get to learn, you know, what was the impact on that, of that activity, and how can I make it better, and how can I restore that.
And I think that ties into that customer service in a way, that yes answer. You know, we had a conversation with a student who was discouraged from doing both honors English and honors math as a 7th grader. So she chose one, and now she wished she had chose the other, because now she can't get in it. It's like,
Right.
well, who does she, you know, how does she, you know, if we welcome her and say, it's okay, you know, you made the wrong choice when you were in 7th grade, you can, in 9th grade, you can make a different choice, or 10th grade, or
Or
whatever.
it was the right choice in 7th, and now
Yeah,
it's the.
and now,
Right.
you know, you've changed your mind. So how do we as a district respond to that?
Well, and I think that the issue there is equity, is access is equal. Because I had a kid who did exactly that, and because I'm a loudmouth or whatever, the doors were open. It was no problem to move into math. But if you don't have a loudmouth parent, then the doors are closed. That equity is an issue.
Or a parent who doesn't know how to access the education system with the same
Absolutely.
degree that you may.
I'm pushing us.
Right,
Yes.
yes, exactly.
Right.
So that it's, that parents know that the doors are open. I think
Well, I
that's the
think
issue.
it's also, if, so, I think there's gonna be parents who aren't ever gonna make that step. So it's opening up the school so that a counselor or a teacher would even have that conversation with the student, that the student could do it on their own. You know, by saying to their math teacher, oh, I really wish I was in the advance. Oh, you can't be.
Right.
You know, that teacher has to be able to know, wait, what?
Yeah.
You know, I wanna talk to you after class, or come talk to me, or, or the student to go, well, I don't like my math teacher, but I like my English teacher and I can go to her, or I like the assistant principal and I'll go to her, and, finding other ways to do it when you don't have a parent who's capable of doing it.
And I think that, yeah, that customer service, if you know the students, then it's
Right.
way easier to have those conversations and be in tune with that.
Well, I think that kind of goes to the broader issue, which, from the visioning perspective, I think, I've come to believe as a board member, that we really have to try and exhaust every possible means of engaging our parents more. And I don't just mean by, how they get emailed or whether they're aware of things. I mean, I really think so much of the success in education is a result of what's happening at home. That I really feel like as a district, we need to try to have a bigger impact on that huge amount of time that our students are not with us.
And so part of it, Parent Square is a tool, but it's designed to give us one option for getting information out in the way that the parent chooses to receive information. So that's for me, that's part of the value of it is, if I don't read email because I don't look at my email, or I don't go on social media, and that's the only way you can communicate with me, that's problematic. It's hard for me to even if I want to engage, I don't know how because I don't have the information. So iterative process, but step one is saying, do you want a text? Do you want an email? Do you want a phone call? And you can, from that exact place, email, text, or call us right back, and we'll get that information, so that we're starting at the very beginning with that two-way communication that's possible, instead of, well, I sent you an email, or I sent you a text, or I all called you, and like, what do you do with an all call? You can't respond,
Just
you just,
listen.
it was one way, right? So, and then
I
building.
talk back to those all the time.
And then building the methods, you're right, so it's the parent engagement classes, it's the PK classes, it's the library being open, it's come to these events, it's, parent STEM night. I mean, there's a ton of ways that we can do that, and you'll see those building over time with this intention of, my parents and community know how to support me.
I would love to see that Parent Square used not just for notifications from schools, but for educational
Mhm.
blasts, you know, whether it's the sending out that Ken Robinson video for parents to see, or here's an article on vaping that we're having an issue with, or whatever. I think that using it as an educational platform for parents would also be good. And as we were talking, I just had a thought of a partnership with the library, because they have homework help there, and parents often use it as after-school care. And so the kids go there, get homework help, and then the parents show up to pick them up in the afternoon hours. What if we had a shelf at the library and had educational materials that the teachers are recommending parents check out, or here's parenting books on whatever topics, and because we know parents are there.
And I think that, was it the state that was also trying to, have schools initiate,
Is there a meeting?
if you need help with, legal help or food stamps or health services, and I was like, we can't take on all of that. But I think just having doors open, I mean, like Annika was, for the Myers Oaks group for a while, was very helpful in letting us know, they're feeling ice pressure, or they're feeling, just making, and it's not necessarily that we have all the, is that a little bit more what you're talking
Yeah,
about?
and also, I guess I was thinking of the phraseology here, the parents and the community know how to support the student. I wonder if we, as a district, should try and figure out how to support the parents.
When you said that, it struck me a different way than I'd ever really thought about it before, because we often say there's a really high correlation between parent engagement and student success. We say that and then we just go on about our business. But there was something in there that you said, and I forget the words exactly, but we should be doing absolutely everything we can to engage the parents. That perhaps is our responsibility as well, in addition to the students. It doesn't end with the student.
So would it be, my parents and community, know how to support me and feel supported? Or know how to, are you suggesting anything for the?
I'm not. It's just an idea. I guess maybe I would then decouple the community and the parents and treat them differently in the vision, and imagine the parents,
My community knows how to support me, and my parents know how to find support. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. We'll mull that over.
Yeah, and again, this is
Astro.
iterative, so if we decide that we wanna change the language around that, and we say, you know what, we think another way, our focus this year is for them to know how to support kids, because we haven't really done that work, and if in the future we want to change it and say, not only do I know how, I am supported myself, or whatever, we can build on that, right? I think right now, we're in step 1, and you're saying, I wanna be in step 5, right, or 10, or whatever.
No, I don't think that's right.
No, okay.
No, I'm talking about just a different and sort of immediate, like saying, attempt at least to engage, I believe that the use of the library in after hours and the provision potentially there of support for parents who have no idea how to help their students with math, for example, or just providing more of those opportunities for parents to be in the mix.
Yeah.
My parents are given resources to support me.
Oh, yeah. Right, that's good.
Because we can't force them to.
I guess I'm wondering,
I love that.
I don't, when we say up till now, we haven't informed the parents how to support their students, I'm not really sure what we mean.
It's not that we haven't, it's to say that we're working on making that more systematic. So in every one of these areas, there are people doing a great job at this in the district. But it's to say that we are working on providing systematic communication in home language, in multiple formats, in ways where you can respond and ask questions, so that it's easier to know how to do that, right? That's kind of.
Yeah, and I agree, and I love the interactive, the ability to go in the other direction. Because I think so often parents do have questions and they just don't even know
Right.
how to penetrate the model. It's like,
Have you tried calling our
yeah,
schools?
yeah,
It's not very
yeah,
easy.
Yeah, it's true. And
the website
and which,
either, like-
and which school,
Yeah,
and
right.
do I call it the school or do I call it the
Right.
district? So yeah, I certainly agree that communication is a huge part of our mission that can be made a lot more systematic, as you said.
So I'll move up to the next level, which is academics. So those colorful rings and the 4 kind of flower petals are academics. I'm working on moving the where the green is. It actually will say my academics are meaningful and engaging as kind of the first part of that petal, since we read left to right. So my academics are meaningful and engaging. That's where you'll see this kind of work around project-based learning this year. As a baby step, eventually getting better and better at that, but starting to talk about project-based learning, what that looks like, resources and tools for project-based learning. And then the next one is I learned the essential curriculum in each grade. So you were kind of both talking about this earlier. If we were to just teach the standards that are currently there for every kid, it would take like 23 years to get through the current standards. We cannot teach every standard, and they're not ranked. They're not, it doesn't tell us really where we should be focusing. So the idea is that we pick standards, the essential curriculum. So our 4th grade team says, at the end of 4th grade, these are the 8 math things that every kid is going to know no matter what. That's the essential curriculum. I have support. If I'm not getting those 8 things, I have support. And if I get those 8 things, I have opportunities to advance and beyond. And it's not that I'm only teaching those 8 things. It's that those are the essential things that we have agreed students will learn, right? And we do regular assessments to see how they're doing. If they're not learning it, we provide them with alternatives. If they like ACE it, we give them alternatives. So this is the work of PLCs that Cheryl's been doing. These 4 little petals are all PLC questions, so they're embedding the work that we're already doing. Anything else you want to add to that, Cheryl?
No, I think you said it well, and I think that, we use the word curriculum. The standards really are the key thing that we have to teach. We know that we can never get to all of them. As you said, it would take 23 years.
So could we stop right there? Because I got to tell you, it's slightly, and I've never heard it really put this way before by anybody in this district, that we just are not going to cover the standards. That's just not going to happen.
It doesn't mean that some kids won't cover all the standards. It means that we have to get good at identifying what the most essential standards are. And there are standards that are more important and are connected to future standards in future years that you have to make sure kids hit. And so that's the work of a PLC, is groups of teachers sitting down and saying, what are the most essential things? How are we going to know when the kids know these things? What are we going to do if they don't know them? And what are we going to do for the kids that do know them? And a lot of our kids are going to excel through those essential things and are going to move on to the wide range, covering all the standards and even going into years ahead. A 4th grader could be working on a 5th grade standard or a 6th grade standard. But we know, and we can see it in our test scores, we know that not all of our kids meet all the standards. And our job is to make sure that they at least learn the essential standards.
And I also think some of the standards are repeated in future years. So
Right,
if you just look at 5th grade history and 8th grade history and 11th
Sure.
grade history, those are repeat items, but you're learning more and you're expanding on them. But there are some things that if you don't get in 4th grade or 5th grade, you're going to struggle in 8th grade. And those are the important things to find out. If you don't remember, whether Paul Revere said 1 if by land or 2 if by land or whatever, that's not important. But that there was 13 colonies, you might not remember the colonies. You know, I know these are not standards, but I'm just saying,
Right.
you know, there's, to me, there's, I don't know, the standards are, I remember getting those packets in
Uh-huh.
fifth grade.
Yeah.
Your child will
Right,
learn
right. And it's
these things, yeah.
And what you'll notice here is it's not us, it's not me saying these are the essential, it's not the state saying these are the essential standards, it's not Cheryl saying these are the essential standards. It's our teachers working together through the PLC process in grade level teams to say, we agree, these are the grade level standards for us that we will focus on, that every kid will walk out of fourth grade knowing how to do fractions.
And the other thing that we get confused about is that when we buy curriculum, it's not our job to cover everything that's in that curriculum. So if you buy language arts curriculum and there's all these stories in there, you don't need to get through every single story. Your job is to teach the standards. The curriculum is a vehicle to help teach those standards. And it is a teacher's job, it's part of the craft, to pick and pull from the curriculum to make sure that they're hitting the standards. And that's where the flexibility really is, to leave behind a story that you might not need to cover in the curriculum, do something that's project-based or a research activity or something like that, and then you still just make sure that you're using that new project to hit whatever standards you were trying to hit, like using text, to answer questions in an argument or an essay or something. So we have to be careful. We don't always have to cover every single bit of curriculum. Our job is to make sure we're hitting the standards.
Well, I wonder if we should change the wording, because what we're saying is I learn the essential curriculum. Don't you
Yeah.
mean we learn the essential
Standards.
standards?
We could, yep, good.
My only concern with that is if a student is not going on to university, then it doesn't matter so much.
The point is, these are the
Whatever
standards
we
that matter for you, for like,
Well, what we decide is fine.
right.
If a student does want to go on to university, what's on the SAT, what's on the ACT is going to be an indicator of that student's success or failure. And we can either contribute to that success or we can contribute to that failure. Also in the state standardized tests. And and the other thing I was thinking about recently, it's not only what's on those tests now, it's what's going to be on the SAT in 10 years is what's important. Not necessarily what's on it right now for elementary school students. And on the one hand, it's fine for us to get caught up in ourselves and our community and say this is what's important to us. And that's fine for kids who aren't planning to move forward. But if they are we aligned? Are we going to help them succeed in the future? Or are we picking standards and curriculum that are great?
You don't think our community values higher education?
I'm not saying that it doesn't, but I'm saying what's specifically valued by universities may not be the same thing that we value in terms of standards and curriculum.
I would argue that if you're looking 10 years out, like you said, the president of the College Board actually wrote recently to colleges and said, you need to quit looking at the SATs so heavily as entrance. It shouldn't be this way. And so I would argue that in 10 years from now, kind of changing the way we do things is going to set our students in a better standing to get into college.
I just think people say a lot of things. I think they'll still be using SATs heavily in the future. I could be wrong.
I think what's nice about the design of the Common Core standards, which is different from before, is they're based on college and career readiness. There's a group of people that came together and said, what do students need to be successful in college and in career? And from those, that became the foundation of developing the standards. And I would say that the standards, the Common Core standards, and the test that is used to assess them at the end of the year, while it's not perfect, is much closer to real life and what you experience in college or career than we ever had before. I mean, you really could teach to the test before. You really could just cram a lot of content in a kid and they could do okay on on a test previously, but now kids really have to be able to critically think. They really have to be able to read material and use that material to argue a point, and that's in the test. And so yeah, I do think that we're heading in the right direction as far as long as we stay on track with essential standards that are Common Core standards. I think our kids are really getting the essential pieces for college and career.
Well, you know, I have to say, one of the things that in my time in the community college system, the biggest problem with college readiness wasn't esoteric logic games or whatever, it was basic skills.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's why they passed a law that says you can't put kids into remedial anymore. Because so many kids needed it, they were putting everybody into
Yeah.
remedial. And what basic skills? Reading, writing, arithmetic, show up on time, you know, don't talk when other people are talking. Really not complex stuff that everybody needs to know. So, yeah, the SATs are important. I just don't think you need to teach to that. I think you need to teach to the basic skills, how to think, because if you're going to be a welder or you're going to be an executive, you need that skill. And if you're going to be a welder who goes into business for himself or herself, then you need those skills too. So I think there's a lot of match. I agree that there's a lot of kids who have different trajectories. I think there's a way to build this so that it serves both simultaneously.
I agree. I just want to make sure we do that.
I think we're being very
That's my
mindful of
only
that.
point.
Yeah.
Can you go back to the, you know, if we're gonna try to do division today?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not sure of the outside of the.
Yep. So you can see at the bottom, I get help if I need it, and I have opportunities to extend my learning if I need it. So this is actually where like community classroom comes in. This is where, you know, we want to make sure that our high achieving kids have opportunities to expand their learning beyond kind of, so everyone has their needs met based according to where they are. And it may be different in different subjects. So,
Remind me what RTI and MTSS
response to intervention, and MTSS is multi-tiered system of support, which is essentially the new version of RTI. We have not yet transitioned to that fully, but, and when this is done, it hopefully won't have this education jargon in it. But again, the parentheses is like, that's the initiative where you'll see those initiatives coming up and you'll hear us saying to you, RTI, and the reason we're doing it is because it fits into this bigger vision of how we support the academic learning of kids. And then the gray box is the community values, so that idea of project-based learning, of place-based learning and place-based education, ensuring that our schools are reflective of the place in which they are situated. So these are kind of the 4 community themes that have come up, that I've been piloting, that everybody seems to mostly go, oh yeah, I agree with that, some more than others. So environmental stewardship and regeneration. And so seeing that kind of in both our district practices and then finding ways in which our students are able to practice that themselves and to learn about that in multiple ways. So environmental studies classes at Mattillahan and Nordhoff, and then also you'll see in our nutrition services doing some of those pieces. So really being a value that we hold. Wellness, which is emotional wellness, physical health, creativity, which is inclusive of the arts, not only art, but art and creative problem solving, and then a culture of inclusivity. So this is where we would have those guiding coalitions from the community who would come and say, what are we doing well? What can we do better? What would we want to see? What are the specific activities around these values that we can do both for the district level and for students?
To me, the circle in the middle is cohesive from the student perspective, and the flower petals are cohesive from the student perspective. When we get to the community, it seems like there's a shift in perspective. When we were talking, when the conversation came up before about the community participation and volunteering, a couple of topics were included: the bond committee, which relates to the facilities, people coming in to share their expertise, whether it's on academic topics or other career topics. I guess from a community, I love a plan that just ties everything together. And I'm just wondering if, when we change that shift and we look out to the community, can we include the areas where the community can come and participate? Improving the facilities, maybe expand the bond committee to more than just overseeing the bond. That, yeah, let's oversee the bond, but let's also have a community committee that looks at what can we do with volunteers to enhance our facilities. A couple of these topics are fine and they require a whole lot of outreach as they are, but others, maybe they could be combined into something that allows the community to come in and help us. We talked about letting the community come in to help us. It would be great if that vision included all of those things.
And I would say the community could be involved in any of these, right? There's a bunch of organizations and people who do support in the center for us. Food for Thought, for example, you know, it's not, the community isn't only in that outside ring, they're actually involved throughout. And I would say part of why it might not feel cohesive is because I don't know what the plan is for these 4 things, right? The idea is if we say those are areas we want to include, then we go out to the community and they help us come together with a plan. The middle and the flower petals, that's what we do every day, right? I know what to do there and we are doing that work. The community values are really the area where they come to us and say, we've got this great idea. We think you should do for culture of inclusion, we think you should you should have parent resources at the library because parents use the library and that would be an inclusive practice.
Right, no, and I'm just thinking maybe the community part is more than 4 things. I mean, I know that a square has 4 sides. But, maybe Food for Thought is part of that. Maybe, some of these other groups are part of that because they are part of our vision. They're part of our community. They're part of our...
I think what we were trying to do with this when we were originally talking, back in May, was that, yes, there's 50 or 100 things that we have people that are interested in, but what are the core ones that keep coming over and over when you talk to people? These are yes, there's somebody who's interested in specifically, the pavilion at Matilla House. Those things can still happen, but are they the things that everyone in town is always talking about? And that's why those ended up here, because those are the ones. That doesn't exclude others. It's just saying these are priority vision elements.
Right, but there are categories that could be inclusive of all those things. I mean, like the pavilion, a pool, other things could come under some sort of facility setting.
Even before we get to the distillation of what those are, I go back to what you said originally, because I had the same thought. In terms of how the components relate to each other, the outside ring just isn't relating to this. There's a natural from the student to everybody else, but somehow that's not communicating. I think those 4 things are important, but from a graphics perspective, it's not really saying what's the interaction or the perspective.
So if this is a flower, what if you have...
A couple other things I want to say first. People are nice to me. Again, for one, nobody's always nice. So I don't think the measure is that people are nice. I think the measure is that people care. And because everything else is framed in the first person, I would do the same thing there. Right? I feel that people care about me, as opposed, because it's really about the eyes, right? Eye out, I feel. I like the petals because they put some context, as you say, into our current projects, and give us a template to slot in future things. You might want some super petals for the community stuff.
Right.
To be a little bit more inclusive. The one thing, and I this is a gut reaction. I don't have a sense of academic rigor coming out of this. And I don't want to overly focus, right? Because we're talking whole person education. But I don't know, I'm just not getting that feeling of really encouraging and striving for academic excellence.
It's funny, we had the word rigorous in there.
We did.
Yeah,
and-
rigorous sounds hard.
Right, and
Yeah.
it was too hard, so we changed rigorous to meaningful, and I think rigorous became meaningful. If there's a word that's not rigorous but conveys the same thing, it's really intended to be in my academics are, you know.
Challenging or something.
maybe-
I
yeah.
felt the
Yeah,
same way.
maybe challenging is good.
I convinced myself that I learned the essential curriculum and each grade covered that. But
Good enough.
But
No, I
I'm
think,
okay, I'm doing an okay
I think my
job.
academics are challenging, meaningful, and engaging are kind of the three things that we would want them to be. So I think that's a good catch of what we were trying to convey, but also not convey in the word rigorous. Yeah.
You know, another thought on the community things, I'm not sure how, of course, we want the community to help us in every possible way that they can, but I'm not sure we can handle, you know,
All that help.
more than up to a point. I think we can handle up to, and I'm just saying, maybe it's 4 things. With the petals, we could do 8, because they're, you know, 8
Well,
little
you could
sides
also
to
do
it.
little ferns coming off
Right.
or ivy, you know, which is the community.
Yeah,
And so then
vines
you end up
coming
with
up.
more than 4.
Anyway, I don't know how many we can handle, but I realize that some of those are inherent in the things in the middle, but I think it would be good to show that the community is involved in those somehow,
And the
if that's our vision.
And the
it's
concept,
not.
if I go back, this is why I started with that foundation of place-based education, right? So it's not the only ways that the community can help us, but these are the themes, kind of like Jane was saying, these are the things that people come to us and say, I'm interested in the school teaching this, I'm interested, these are things that people say, I wanna see in my schools, right? If I'm gonna put my kid in public school instead of private school, I want these things, because these things exist in our private schools in a kind of a meaningful way. Like, I might go to a particular school because it has, you know, one of these values that we don't see as one of our reflected in a meaningful way in our schools yet, because it's probably there, but we haven't identified to say, yes, this is something in the community that you're interested in, and we also do this in our school. So I think maybe the function of it isn't to say, you know, these are areas where we want your help. It's to say, we know that in the Ojai Valley, people care about these broad
These are
categories.
our social values.
Right, these are social values. That's a good way to think about it.
So one other teeny
Yes.
thing, just,
Yes.
can we not use dashboard colors?
That's a great idea. That's a great idea.
I have one other thing to add, which is
Or
just,
make them all green.
Blue is the best color.
when you talk about comparing us to private schools, I think one thing that people think wrongly sometimes about, for example, Nordoff, is that, you know, when you talk about meaningful and engaging academics, that kind of Dead Poets Society sort of sitting in a room with a bunch of intelligent English students discussing a good novel does not happen, and it does. And so the idea that everything that a proxy for that concept is project-based learning, I don't really agree with. I think there's actually a lot of great, engaging, highly intellectual, just sort of shooting the crap that goes on in the best way at the high school, and I know Thatcher prides itself on that. The idea of these great, you know, mentors that sit and discuss history with these wonderful students, and that does happen at Nordoff, and I don't want to send the message that it doesn't. And while I think project-based learning is great in certain environments, I also think there's room for talking about Shakespeare just because,
Without creating,
without creating a mobile that looks like Shakespeare.
Right.
But isn't this
the parentheses just our focus this year and what we're initiating, but it's not trying to include everything that we're.
I don't know what it, I don't know who this is for. I would worry that a potential parent who's considering bringing their kid to our school would look at that and say, oh, well, apparently they're all about project-based learning.
So it could be that, and this is something for us to think about, the reason those are included in there, so when staff hears we're doing project-based learning, we're doing like all the acronyms, PLCs, PBL, RTI, SEL, RJ, right? They know like, how do all of these connect together? So it's not to say the only way that academics are challenging, meaningful, and learning, it's to say, you may hear us talking about project-based learning, providing opportunities on professional development for project-based learning. And the reason we're doing that is because we have this value of our academics being challenging. It's not to say that's the only way to get to it. It's to say that's one initiative that we have to support the implementation of that pedal.
But maybe maybe those parentheses things are something more internal than.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
that's
Yeah.
exactly what I was
That's a good
thinking. As a board document, maybe we just take out everything in parentheses. But when you go to staff,
Right.
you can say, how can we accomplish this? This is how we can accomplish it.
Yeah,
That's
so
the
this
part
is
that
a,
changes every iteration, right?
Right.
Stuff that's in the parentheses.
right, that's right. Those are the things that next year may not look like that. But you're right, these don't even mean anything necessarily to parents anyway. So I think it's for a vision that we publish, it doesn't include those things. But when talking to staff, part of this is a roadmap of where we're going. And so they can use it as a roadmap.
But
And
it
I
does
would-
give you a template for talking to parents about what the current year's priorities are in a maybe a little bit more expansive way than just the project-based learning, which is kind of isolated, but,
Right.
I mean, we're introducing it not to the exclusion of everything else, right? So,
Right, what I was gonna say, I think it's a balance, it's not either or. And I would also argue that, if you had some classes that were more project-based, you'd be better at discussing Shakespeare, because you would have moved and done stuff, but if every single class is discussionary, it's hard to sit there that long for a student in high school.
Yeah, hopefully I didn't suggest that I was saying that project-based learning is not good. I just wanted to make
Not
sure
at the
that
cost
we
of other things.
recognize the amazing engagement
Right.
and enriching things that are going on that aren't project-based learning.
Right.
I also was gonna say, in comparing public and private schools, I think one of the things that families are looking for when they look to private school is often community. Having a built-in community that they belong to. So if we are creating belonging at our, especially elementary campuses, I think we become much more appealing. Having a way for parents to meet each other and supporting that kind of work. And I also heard from families, this was new to me, what new parents bringing young kindergarten or TK kids are looking for in schools, and it was safety. They were talking about safety, and we asked specifically, what does that look like? And the answer was fenced schools, classrooms with hiding spaces, and classrooms with multiple exits, and my heart broke. But it was surprising to me to understand that, and I don't know how we reflect safety as part of our community value, that in building community, we built safety.
Well, I mean, I don't imagine, I don't know how many people you heard that from, but when I look at our other private schools, I don't necessarily see that. And then we had Captain Frydenoff who said actually fences are very unsafe.
I would agree, I'm just saying what parents think is safe. Maybe
Yeah.
we need to do education around that. because
It
that's-
feels good to be here.
Right, that's true, that one encompasses the safety issue.
you know, though, it, to go back to our private school model, though, I mean, there are things that can be learned in addition to that, and you touched on it earlier in the customer service training, right? Because that's the other thing that parents get out of private schools is a much higher level of service and responsiveness of necessity, right? Because the parents are there by choice, and they can yank them, and the money goes, and that's that. I've often said public sector schools, get their funding sort of automatically. If you had to justify your funding from a zero base every year, you might find yourself working really hard. And so I think if we're gonna look at private schools and trying to say what we have to offer is at least as good, if not better, service is one of those areas where we really have to get back to. It goes back to what you were saying before. Nobody listens after you start your answer with no. Culture of yes.
Well, and I think that that iterative idea, it changes. What you're looking for in kindergarten is warm and fuzzy. What you're looking for at the high school is academic rigor and, other students who are college bound and, so it's going to be different depending on the age of your child.
Yeah.
And what you're looking to achieve. Yeah.
So it's kind of impossible to encapsulate everything into one vision. What I'm hoping is,
That's why you're here to do it.
yeah, right. What I'm hoping is this, again, not looking at this as, well, we're setting the vision forever, we're never gonna touch it again, it's permanently etched into stone on the walls of every school.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea is this a sufficient starting place for me to work with staff and parents and communities and students to say, this is where we're going this year, these are the things that we want to value, this is what we're working towards to provide to every student in an OUSD school. And we can revisit these things and say in a year or less than a year, hopefully, and have that frequent feedback loop and show this to students and say, does this, are you getting these things? Do you notice these things? Where can we grow? And as a starting place for our iterative design and our risk-taking and our place. Or would you like to go back to, do you want us to scratch out some bullet points, and we can do that too. This is kind of where I think we might try going this year collectively, and then, modify as we need to.
I feel that, when you look at this is well worded, but it's very broad strokes, and this feels very, a little bit more specific to me, so, I don't know.
Well, and I would argue visually, I read this and I've looked at this and I know I've read it, but how many times have I read it?
Right.
It's not easily consumable. I think this is far more.
If I was an employee and I was trying to put together next year's goals, this would give me many, many points of reference, places to work and things to impact. That doesn't give me anything.
Mm-hmm.
So I like this.
Yeah, I'm good with it. Listen, I see all this as opportunities to raise issues. Every one of the issues raised here is completely valid. I think the tip of the spear needs to be all in for this, and you're the tip of the spear, so I'm in support.
So the changes that I heard that we can work on is, my parents are given resources to support me. Or maybe even my parents have reasons. So we struggled a little bit with the language around this about not making it like the kid has to go do things, so we'll work on that. But something around parents having available resources to support you, changing curriculum to standards, going from people are nice to me to I feel like people care about me, and then my academics are challenging, meaningful, and engaging. Yep. And then rolling this out to staff on Monday
I
to
kind of like
parents.
the nice, or kind. I think I like a pointedness to that. Straight up.
Nice tells me how to
There's no reason
behave.
not to be
I
kind.
like that better too. I've taught, we're going over time already, but I went to 3 colleges, and the first one, I think my professors really cared about me. The second one, they pretended to care about me.
They were nice.
And the third one, they didn't even try. And I liked the first and the third, I didn't like the second. And so, people are nice to me, I think that does give direction and it's comfortable.
I like care personally. I think that
If they really do,
then they are nice.
then,
It's a little
Yeah.
more abstract though. I just like, if you're gonna talk about customer service, getting more specific and saying, we expect everyone to be kind, it's a little more directed than abstractly caring about someone.
I agree.
I could work with kind as opposed to nice.
People are kind to me as a compromise. Right.
Can we take a 2-minute break?
Yeah, so the good news is you don't have to do the next activity. And we'll
Until
save it
our
for the-
next retreat.
Until the next time.
All
But you
right.
can look at it and think about
we're
it. for
going
next time.
to,
Venn diagrams.
Yeah. Isn't that
stop.
exciting?
All right, we're going to end our board retreat section